Y2. Despite their possession of 61% majority shareholdings in VTI based on SEC records, the Y4 now face arrest. RAPIDO! There can be no basis for warrants of arrests to issue, as the question of who between the two contending groups legally manages and operates VTI has not yet been resolved by the same court. The resolution of that issue will also determine the authority of the complainant to file suit involving VTI vehicles. By issuing arrest warrants without first resolving who between the two groups has authority to manage VTI and file complaints for it, the result of the pending intra-corporate case is now a foregone conclusion. The Y4 remain confident that truth, justice, and the rule of law will prevail, and that the charges against them will be proven unauthorized and untrue. RAPIDO! Bacolod City. Complaints dismissed against Y4 for carnapping of 55 buses, possession of explosives, and robbery. The latest string of criminal cases filed by Leo Reynold and Ginette Tumancas, or the Y2, and their supporters against Roy, Emily, Ricardo Jansen Jr., and Maria Lourdes Salina Lopez, also known as the Y4, to legitimize their control over Vale Car Transit Incorporated, VTI. Despite the Y4 majority stock holdings of 61.16% of the corporation's outstanding capital stock, were dismissed last Friday by the Department of Justice, DOJ. A carnapping case for 55 buses filed against the Y4 was struck down for dearth of evidence and the lack of unlawful taking, as the buses were voluntarily parked by their drivers in the premises of Dynamic Builders, owned by one of the Y4. Further, the DOJ said the drivers simply parked their bus units inside the premises of Dynamic Builders on the premise that it would be safe in the said place following the chaotic takeover by the faction of Leo Ray of VTI premises without any court order. This was an incident at the height of the violent siege in August 2019 by Y2 and the police in the Muncie Lincoln head office of the bus company, which was done without any court order, and despite the pendency of Leo Ray's suit questioning his ouster as VTI's former president. The dismissed charges included those filed against the spouse and children of the Y4, Margarethe Rose, Rihanna McCole, and Christopher Ulrich Jansen, who were directors of Dynamic Builders. The charges of grave coercion against Roy, Emily Jansen, Maria Lourdes Salina Lopez, Rose, Rihanna McCole, and Christopher Jansen were also dismissed, as no sufficient evidence was established by complainant against them. Ricardo Jansen Jr. was however indicted for grave coercion and violation of the Public Service Act, and Emily Jansen was also indicted for falsification and perjury, both of which their lawyers will continue to question before the Secretary of Justice and exhaust all available legal remedies. Rapido! Meanwhile, the charge of possession of explosives under Republic Act No. 9516 was also dismissed in its entirety by the DOJ, as the Y4 were neither in physical or constructive possession of the items recovered. Further, the DOJ noted that the recovery of the items creates a serious question of credibility as to their source of origin, and that the complaint is anchored generally in conjectures, suspicions, and speculations, and therefore have no probative value and cannot stand in the realm of evidence. Concurrently, the charges against the Y4 for robbery by the use of force upon things, possession of picklock or similar tools were likewise dismissed by the DOJ. Rapido! While, inexplicably, Jerica Leanne Ramos and Jerina Louise Ramos, daughters of Emily Jansen, were included in the complaint against the Y4, all charges against them were dismissed by the investigating state prosecutor. Lawyers of the Y4 then ask how the Y4 were indicted for qualified theft of property owned by VTI when they were incumbent operating officers and comprise its board of directors. The validity of this finding will also be questioned before the courts and the DOJ. The dismissal of these criminal complaints against the Y4 comes at the heels of an earlier dismissal of another set of criminal cases against them for arbitrary detention, grave threats, grave coercion, among others, also by the DOJ. It will be remembered that these cases were filed by the Y2 and their supporters after they wrested possession of VTI's premises without a court order from the Y4 in August 2019, who were then sitting as its operating officers, to consolidate their claim of ascendancy over the management of VTI, reputed to be the largest bus transport conglomerate in the country. Rapido! The intra-corporate actions and countersuit filed by the siblings against each other continue to pend before the Bacolod RDC and Court of Appeals in Cebu.
Barcolored City. Charges against Emily Jansen on appeal with DOJ. Emily Jansen's indictment for falsification and perjury upon a complaint filed by her own brother, Leo Ray, and mother, Olivia Jansen, as alleged officers of Valaka Transit Incorporated, VTI, is now the subject of an appeal before the Department of Justice, DOJ. This is one in a string of cases filed by the minority faction of Leo Ray and his supporters after their violent takeover without any court order of the Mansalingen head office of VTI, which was then managed by the Y4 majority shareholders Roy, Emily, Ricardo Jr., and Maria Lourdes Selena Lopez. The Y4 claim that this nuisance suit was done to consolidate Leo Ray's control over the bus company despite the pendency of an intra-corporate case that he himself filed, now pending with the Bacolod RTC. The appeal filed by Emily showed official records in the files of the SEC that confirm she was the corporate secretary and director of VTI from the years 2016 to 2019. It alleged admissions made by Leo Ray and sister, Jeanette Demancus, in company documents. Leo Ray, who was VTI's president up until his ouster in July 2019 by the Y4, consented to and allowed these official documents to be filed by Emily with the SEC. He agreed to everything that was reported, until he turned about and now questions Emily's shares and actions as VTI corporate secretary, while he was its president. The Y4 assert that Leo Ray cannot anymore claim that Emily was not a stockholder and secretary of VTI as he was its chairman and president. When those official documents were submitted to the SEC, he accepted and was quiet about it from 2016 to 2019, and he alone had command responsibility and bore the duty to ensure the correctness of actions taken by his officers, including reports done before that government regulatory agency by Emily for the past 4 years. Olivia was no longer a shareholder of VTI since 2015, when she signed an extrajudicial settlement of the estate of her late husband, Ricardo Sr., and relinquished her shares in favor of her children. This fact is plain in admissions made in court by Jeanette herself. VTI is a corporation that can only act through its board of directors and authorized corporate officers. A corporation's official acts are reflected in secretary's certificate signed by the secretary who takes instructions from its president. It then is funny how Emily's acts as approved by Leo Ray himself can now be taken against her and considered as falsified or perjured, when he surely would not have allowed it if it were untrue. Ricardo Jansen Jr., EVY's brother, was elected as VTI's corporate secretary at the annual stockholders meeting of the company conducted in December 2019. Barcolored City. For more than 5 decades, Valaka Transit Incorporated and the Jansen Group of bus companies has steadily grown as a reliable partner of the Filipinos as its preferred transportation company. RAPIDO! With its more than 4,800 buses managed by 18,000 employees, RAPIDO provides public transport for more than 700,000 Filipinos daily. But its steady growth was shattered by an internal scandal. RAPIDO! July 7th, 2019. Jansen 4 siblings, namely Roy, Selena, Ricky, Emily, illegally removed Leo Ray Jansen, LRY, as president of Valaka Transit Incorporated, known to many that patriarch of the family daddy Ricardo Jansen Sr. before his death, personally selected Leo Ray as his successor as the CEO for his unwavering dedication to the company and to the welfare of the employees.
I will formally announce to you that our son, Leo Ray Jansen, have our blessings and complete confidence in leading and managing the affairs of the Jansen Group of bus companies. To all of you, thank you very much. May God bless you and Godspeed.
After the death of the patriarch, the same 4 siblings denied the shares of Olivia Villaflores Jansen, OVY, who is the co-founder of VTI. They have denied the shares of the company and did not recognize her as a shareholder of the company. July 12, 2019. The illegal removal of LRY was not supported by its 18,000 employees and had attempted to stage a strike to voice their disapproval to the illegal removal. On that same day, AEY Security Agency, the newly hired agency of the Janssen 4, tried to take over terminals in Barangay Bata and Barangay Sambok. VTI matriarch and owner Olivia Villaflores Janssen, OVY, eases tension and calls for calm resolution to the issue. July 19th, 2019. OVY formally pleads the Janssen 4 to stop their attempt to take over the terminals. OVY adds, our employees have spoken. In our 15 branches have spoken. They only recognize Leo Ray as president. If you insist on the legality of our claim, let the court decide first before proceeding on any action against the terminal or against any employee loyal to me or Leo Ray. July 22nd, 2019. Despite their efforts to control its other branches, VTI employees and management continues to rally behind OVY, LRY and GYD. July 25th, 2019. Roy Janssen with armed men forcefully takes over Dumaguete City office and shop. August 7th, 2019. The Philippine National Police (PNP) has intervened to keep the peace in Ceres Terminal in Mansalingan, Bacolod City. This is upon the request of the PNP National Headquarters Supervisory Office on Security Investigation Agencies, SOJA, represented by Colonel Jamie Santos, Chief of the Enforcement Management Division. August 9, 2019. The main headquarters of Janssen Group of Bus Companies was ransacked by an unidentified man. 3,000 official receipts, certificate of registration (ORCRs) of the company vehicles and 800 land titles owned by the company was. August 19th, 2019. OVY with Leo Ray Janssen LRY and Jeanette Janssen Dumancus GYD regained control of the company in a special stockholders meeting held at the company's main office in Mansalingan. In the same location, the same board meeting took place and re-elected LRY as president and CEO of VTI. The following year also elected on the same meeting Charles Dumancus, Vice President, Jeanette Janssen Dumancus, Treasurer, and Olivia Janssen, Corporate Secretary. In its annual board meeting, LRY was re-elected as the president of the bus company with OVY, Corporate Secretary, Charles Dumancus, Vice President, Jeanette Janssen Dumancus, Treasurer, with Arvin John Villarreal, Anita Chua and Daniel Nicholas as Board of Directors. January 18, 2020. The stockholders of Mindanao Star Bus Transport Incorporated reappointed Leo Ray V. Janssen as the president of the company. OVY was also reappointed as corporate secretary and treasurer. January 19th, 2020. The stockholders of Bachelor Express Incorporated re-elected LRY as president and CEO of the company. OVY was also reappointed as secretary and treasurer. February 3rd, 2020. The stockholders of Ceres Transport Incorporated (CTI) and Gold Star Bus Transit Incorporated (GSBTI), both sister of Valacar Transit Incorporated, re-elected Leo Ray Janssen LRY as president and CEO. OVY was also elected as secretary and treasurer. The stockholders of Rural Transit Incorporated re-elected Leo Ray Janssen LRY as president and CEO. OVY was also elected as secretary and treasurer. March 10th, 2020. Bacolod Court found probable cause against Janssen for Roy, Selena, Ricky and Emily, and their collaborators for grave coercion against VTI employees. June 4th and 5th, 2020. Bacolod Court released arrest for Janssen 4 and their cohorts for grave coercion and kidnapping. According to the said case, the Janssen 4 have been accused of conspiring, cooperating, and confederating with each other, did then and there, willfully, unlawfully, and feloniously took possession and control, with intent to gain. The alleged kidnapping was made with the help of the Janssen 4 security people during their lightning takeover of the VTI board in July 2019, wherein the siblings voted to install the eldest brother, Roy Janssen, to replace Leo Ray, the youngest. Leo Ray emphasized that his parents Ricardo and Olivia built Ceres from scratch. Legally and morally, OVY owns VTI. OVY owns Ceres, says VTI and Janssen Group of Bus Companies President and CEO Leo Ray Janssen LRY. heartfelt message to mommy, love from Y4. August 30th, 2020. It was confirmed yesterday that the Janssen matriarch, Olivia V. Janssen, was rushed to a hospital ER and had to be airlifted to Manila due to difficulty in breathing. It was later on posted on social media that she is being treated in a private hospital. The Y4, having no direct communication with their mother, and only knew about her medical emergency through the postings, no different from everyone else. They had lost direct communication with their mom. This news deeply saddens them, and they had individually sent heartfelt personal messages to express their love and concern for their mom, hoping it would reach her. With the current family circumstances and existing travel restrictions, the Y4 are sadly unable to be by their mother's side, even if they want to. The Y4 had always made clear that they do care and love their mother despite the ongoing dispute between them. They really miss their mom so much. At times like this, disagreements can be cast aside as their main concern is her medical condition and current state of health. The only thing they can do now is to sincerely and fervently pray that she is able to get past this health issue and recover quickly from it. The Y4, Roy, Emily, Selena, Ricky, their spouses and their children pray in silence for the speedy recovery of their mom. Wawa. Regional prosecutor upholds dismissal of complaint against Y4 for trespassing in Dumaguete. In its resolution on June 3, 2020, the Office of the Regional Prosecutor upheld the resolution of the City Prosecutor of Dumaguete City dismissing in its entirety the complaint for trespassing filed by Olivia Janssen against her children Roy Janssen, Ricardo Janssen Jr. and Maya Lourdes Selena Janssen Lopez, also known as the Y4, with Emily Janssen completing the quartet. In its November 29, 2019 resolution, the City Prosecution of Dumaguete City found that, because the Y4 are Olivia Janssen's children and the property which were entered into is registered in her name as well as her late husband, Ricardo Janssen Sr., the latter's passing vested upon the Y4 hereditary and co-ownership rights over the property. It also found that Olivia Janssen had no personal knowledge of the incident complained of. The Office of the Regional Prosecutor held that there was no reason to reverse the finding of the City Prosecutor of Dumaguete City, and noted that the purpose of preliminary investigation is to secure the innocent against hasty, malicious, and oppressive prosecution. The Office of the Regional Prosecutor ruled that despite ownership by Olivia Janssen of the property, it was being used by Valika Transit Incorporated, VTI, of which the Y4 are directors and officers. Due to this, as well as the pending intra-corporate case in Bacolod City, it cannot rule on the Y4 or their representatives being stripped of their authority to enter it. Meanwhile, as for the charge that the Y4 should be liable for the change of security personnel in the property, the regional prosecutor averred that such issue involves administrative and managerial protocols which this office has no basis to tackle without any evidence or legal basis to begin with. Lawyers of the Y4 hail the recognition by the Office of the Regional Prosecutor that the intra-corporate case in Bacolod City would be determinative of the management and control of VTI, and in conjunction with it, the propriety of filing criminal cases on its behalf against the Y4. Heritage. It started with just one jeepney plying a route from town to town, and eventually turned into the largest bus transport in the Philippines. the Valika Transport Incorporated. Dr. Ricardo B. Janssen, RBY, focused on his passion on experimenting and innovating motor vehicles along with automotive body works. Maximizing his skills, he was able to acquire and assemble new jeepneys that by the 70s, the business diversified into buying second-hand trucks and rebuilt them as transport units, which started the small bus line named after his younger sister, Svetlana. Part of that diversification was venturing to Mindanao, wherein the bus business truly thrived and grew. It wasn't long before they also expanded into buying out rival companies that allowed them to service a wider range of commuters in other provinces as well. Needless to say, the business grew by leaps and bounds the following decades, and as operations increased, so did several brands with different functions and area of operations under the umbrella of the Janssen Group of Bus Companies, YGBC. Dr. Ricardo B. Janssen's legacy is all too familiar, as a lot were written and published about it after his passing. It was clear as day how he worked hard to humbly serve his family, employees, and community. Alas, how unfortunate to discover that his wife, Olivia V. Janssen, along with his 2 children, Leo Ray V. Janssen, LRY, and Jeanette Y. Dumancus, known as the Y2, do not share the same vision. They lost no time in mobilizing their power and position to slowly ease out the other 4 children. The Y4, Y2's desire is to have full control, completely opposite of what their father wanted. The legacy of power and position were supposedly gifts to steward, not tools to destroy both family and business.
Because of sakay going bullying, sakay 3 game before, and then sakay Leo Ray, palakpakan ng sila siguro sa people. What will each and every one of you be? RAPIDO! We are done. I am concerned sa inyo ang mga future. Sometimes, you know, there are siblings they're not like the way you and may mga sibling already larahay barbe but what is important is nagpapansin may pagdulaong ka na niya sibling loyal barbe, because ang importante is nakapagsabi ka binigyan sa you have to engage sa palingan, maayos sa niya, kaya na nagagawa. But anyway, kaya ko sa why do you want to bother? Why do you want to bother when may wakakan? But what is important is harmony between all of you. Between the second, third, and all the generations of the family. While there is unity next time. I know for a fact that there has been a lot of so many people and many people involved. RAPIDO! Because of sitting rivalry, because of the cases filed left and right, by each and every one of them to anybody, all of them. Ang parta nila yun, uhulan nila sa alabas. I hope it will not happen to you. Kung may diferensya ang isa sa inyo, ang pasensya namin. You will be like children. Ang mga children niya kung inambang ang may bata, dito na ako hindi anybody. Kung hindi na sila bumanay nila yan, kumaya sa nayan na sila. Kaya why sila nga both sa kaya sa RAPIDO! When you realize the benefits sometimes, we cannot forget them. And that's why what is important is to forgive and forget what they're getting on the benefits. And I would like you to promise each and everyone here, and probably we will have a chance to have
hope that we will inculcate that in our minds, in our hearts, kung ano ang meron sa isa-isa natin. Pasensya ko, nakikinig ko, pasensya na kita. Kalabanan sa mga successful in life are the people who started from the because they are hardworking. So we are a family to be reckoned if all of you will join forces together. If all of you will be one in decision. What is important is integrity. RAPIDO! What is important is trustworthiness. Without that, you are nothing as a businessman.
That is a legal fact.
RAPIDO!
It all started when Leo Ray V. Janssen, LRY, was removed as president of YGBC as a result of a special board meeting held on July 7, 2019 for violating company rules. The majority of board directors then placed Roy V. Janssen as the new president, a decision LRY would not accept and brought this to the lower courts. An ongoing battle that has been dragging on as hearings are repeatedly rescheduled, and up until now still pending before the Bacolod RTC and Court of Appeals. LRY, Jeanette Y. Dumancus, GYD, along with their mother Olivia V. Janssen, OVY, did not stop there. They filed cases after cases, and were not content, nor satisfied as they leveled it up, and filed ridiculous criminal charges.
RAPIDO!
Thankfully, most of those charges were recently junked by DOJ. It seems that the Y2 are fast-tracking the criminal charges, and slowing down most civil cases. They are adamant in putting the Y4 behind bars. It may very well be an intentional move. Why? 1. They want the Y4 out of the picture. 2. It buys them time. All these takes away the focus from the intra-corporate dispute. Why? Let us run that by you again. Leo Ray V. Janssen, LRY, and Jeanette Y. Dumancus only hold a 38% minority shareholdings in Valaka Transit, VTI, as against the remaining siblings who together have 61.6% shares in the company.
Allow me to probably give you the provenance of that shareholders agreement para maintindihan ninyo, no? The dad of the 4 siblings, actually the 6 of them, the dad of all the Janssen siblings was prescient. He was forward-looking. Actually, he was ahead of his time. Why do I know this? Because I had taken a look at all the papers, and it would seem to me that as early as 2008, he knew that there would be a problem once he passes on. And so in 2008, he actually employed or contracted the services of the Ateneo Business Management Center in order to organize a family constitution for all of them. The family constitution was not like the Philippine constitution. It was something that actually directed the children and the wife, Mrs. Olivia Janssen, for a strategic and gradual transfer and a roadmap of how the assets will be transferred should he depart. And when that occurred, it took them 2 years to sign it. Why was that? Because there were a lot of discussion, consultation. There were matters that needed to be addressed by Mrs. Janssen, Olivia, and the children were simply subservient and complied with what their father would like them to do. So in 2010, or 2 years after the original convocation of a seminar and consultation, a family constitution, also known as the Janssen Family Constitution, was crafted. It was signed on December 10, 2010. Now, this particular constitution is very peculiar because one of the things that was directed was that all assets of the parents will devolve, will go down to the children on equal shares, as Attorney Raul had said. But I think one important characteristic of this constitution is that the fathers saw that there would indeed be a situation where they might, one of them could, or a few of them could, actually start trouble amongst themselves. RAPIDO! So there was a very specific provision. In fact, it's part of the mission and vision of this family constitution, that there will be absolutely no lawsuits filed. Absolutely nothing will be filed in court, even as a last resort. And this you can quote me on it because it's there. Even as a last resort. Rapido! So in 2010, they had that, but he again was very forward-looking. He knew that the Constitution could be honored in the breach rather than in its observance. So sabi niya, para hindi magulo, kasi everybody signed the family constitution, including the third generation, the children of the people in front of you now. Rapido! He went one step further to make it legal, because the family constitution, as you may know, is simply acquiesced to. Sumasang-ayon lang kayo. You simply say, yes, we agree to that, you know, and all of those things. And that was only good if the patriarch was still there. The glue, the hook that holds the entire group together. Rapido! True enough, he implemented it and made certain that it now becomes legal. So he hired, note, consultants from Manila, not from Bacolod, not from Cagayan de Oro, and people who knew estate planning very well, tax consultants as well as experts who studied overseas in order to arrange and fix all of the assets of this huge corporation and the members who would constitute the successors to the literal throne. Rapido! It took them 3 years to do that, with a lot of meetings held in El Fisher, meetings held in Meralco Training Center in Antipolo City, and in so many other venues where they even had little pamphlets and little books that actually summarized what it was that was being discussed in all of those meetings. And they came up now with what Raul mentioned as a shareholders agreement. Mind you, folks, the shareholders agreement is not a thin document. It consists of 19 pages, and this was signed on each and every page. Rapido! But that's not the important thing even about this. The shareholders agreement actually covered all the major companies, including Valyacar, Bachelor, Mindanao Star, Rapido! Everything. Even the one in Batangas was covered by that. So the shareholders agreement was signed by the Y2, those people who are going against them now. And all of them as well. Was the shareholders agreement notarized? No, it was not, because it was a private agreement amongst them. Rapido! If you're a lawyer, you will know a notarization is not indispensable to make a contract or an agreement valid. It simply adds an imprimatur, parang binindisyonan, so that it is easy for you to present in court. But as you may know, even a handshake is a contract. Even a verbal agreement, when you say, yes, I'm willing to pay you 10 pesos, is an agreement. In this particular instance, all of them signed on each and every page, including Mrs. Olivia Yanson, saying, if any of the shareholder passes on, all of those rights of that deceased shareholder will devolve to the six. Rapido! And it was very specific in one section that the wife of the deceased person will not get anything. And who is that? In the case of Ricardo Yanson Sr., it was Mrs. Olivia Yanson. So in compliance with that shareholders agreement, which was signed during the birthday of Roy Yanson on October 10, 2013, Rapido! They immediately executed an extrajudicial settlement of the estate of their dad when he died on October of 2015. You see how forward-looking the gentleman was, no? 2013, 2010, he completed everything which would have brought down the assets and the management of the corporations from them, the oldies, to the younger generation, including the third gen.
RAPIDO!
Now, how did that occur? How did the extrajudicial settlement happen? Because all of them knew and agreed that when the dad dies, Mrs. Olivia Jansson would get nothing. What would she get in return? And this is what she does not disclose. Mrs. Olivia Jansson gets all real estate, all cash, all chattel, and they signed a side agreement called a Memorandum of Agreement also on the same day that says whatever dividends she used to receive as a former owner of the companies, she would continue to have. In other words, walang nag-change except for the fact that she is no longer a signatory, she is no longer an officer, and she cannot interfere in management of the companies. They agreed to it voluntarily with their eyes wide open, and note, before a notary public in Pasig.
RAPIDO!
Not even from Bacolod. This was the shareholders agreement, and again in the extrajudicial settlement of the estate of Ricardo, which was signed on December 11, 2015, and subsequently again they amended it on December 21 of 2017. 2 years after the first EJS was signed, pinirmahan uli nila another one in order to equalize the shares.
RAPIDO!
So you go back to the fundamental question. Are the people in front of you actually what the Y2 claims or claim they are? Namely, is this about greed, or is this about what was just rightfully given to them as far back as 2013? Is this actually in pursuance of the 2010 agreement, the Constitution? I think we know what the Constitution is and how important it is. Now, is this now sub judice, as Raul again sought to clarify earlier? Well, right now it's no longer sub judice because it's already published in newspapers in Bacolod that one of their siblings, her name is Jeanette Dumangkas, confirmed not only the existence of those documents, Constitution, shareholders, extrajudicial settlement of estate, and amended extrajudicial settlement of estate when she testified before the Bacolod Court, RTC 45. So is this sub judice? It's there. It's a judicial admission. She actually confirmed the fact that all of these matters do exist. Now, of course, the basic question which you probably need to understand is, does not now entitle them to take over the company. Of course, I think you know that even if she admitted all of those things, they will not relinquish possession. They will not relinquish management. They will not relinquish anything relating to divulging revenues of the company, which, as you may know, all are in cash on a daily basis, 24/7 and 365 days in a year.
RAPIDO!
So you could just imagine the difficulty, the annoyance, the grief that the four people here in front of you are feeling of being yanked out of both management and possession and deprived of their rightful share in the company when it was agreed upon as early as 2013 that they're entitled to a sixth of everything, regardless of who they are, regardless of who they married, and regardless of their own provenance or their relationship with Olivia, the matriarch of the family. So I think with that preface, please understand that all of these now are now public record, because they presented it, or we presented it rather, we presented it before the Bacolod Court, Branch 45, and it's there for you to examine. If it is a matter that she had admitted under oath when she testified, then it probably could support some truth about what actually is their situation and what it is that their position and its propriety are.
That is a legal fact. RAPIDO! It all started when Leo Ray V. Jansen, LRY, was removed as president of YGBC as a result of a special board meeting held on July 7, 2019, for violating company rules. The majority of board directors then placed Roy V. Jansen as the new president, a decision LRY would not accept, and brought this to the lower courts. An ongoing battle that has been dragging on as hearings are repeatedly rescheduled, and up until now still pending before the Bacolod RTC and Court of Appeals. LRY, Jeanette Y. Dumancus, GYD, along with their mother Olivia V. Jansen, OVY, did not stop there. They filed cases after cases, and were not content, nor satisfied as they leveled it up, and filed ridiculous criminal charges. Thankfully, most of those charges were recently junked by DOJ. It seems that the Y2 are fast-tracking the criminal charges and slowing down most civil cases. They are adamant in putting the Y4 behind bars. It may very well be an intentional move. Why? 1. They want the Y4 out of the picture. 2. It buys them time. All these takes away the focus from the intra-corporate dispute. Why? Let us run that by you again. Leo Ray V. Jansen, LRY, and Jeanette Y. Dumancus only hold a 38% minority shareholdings in Valaka Transit, VTI, as against the remaining siblings who together have 61.6% shares in the company.
But what is important is harmony between all of you. Between the second, third, and all the generations of the family. While there is unity, there is strength. I know for a fact that there has been a lot of so many people and many people before. Not because of sitting right on me, but because of the cases filed left and right, by each and every one of them to anybody, all of them. I hope it will have happened to you. Kung may diferensya ang isa sa inyo, ang pasensya namin. You will be like children. Ang mga children niya kung inambak ng may badaya, dito na tako hindi ngayon sa iba. Kung nagsin ang mga ngayon nila, kaya sa nayan na sila. Kailan, wala sila ng hope sa kahit sa isa. RAPIDO! When you may have been sometimes, we cannot forget them. And that is why what is important is to forgive and forget what they're getting on my friends. And I would like you to promise each and everyone here, and probably we will have a chance to have a I hope that we will inculcate that in our minds, in our hearts, kung ano ang mayroon sa isa-isa natin. Pasensya ko, nakikinig ko, pasensya kita. Kalabanan sa mga successful life are the people who started because they are hardworking. So we are a family to be reckoned with if all of you will join forces together. If all of you will be one in the system. What is important is integrity. What is important is trustworthiness. Without that, you are nothing as a
pieces of the puzzle. When the trouble between the Janssen siblings divided them into two factions, most of their long-term employees were caught in the middle. Some go way back, when the patriarch was still in the helm making the business grow. They knew his hard work wasn't for him alone, but for them too, riding to success together as a family. With the current turmoil, it seems the financial stability of the company's most valued asset, the employees, is in peril. Since the time Leo Ray V. Janssen, LRY, Jeanette Y. Dumancus, GYD, and Olivia V. Janssen took over the operations of the Valika Transit Incorporated, VTI, it headed into a downward spiral. Not because the company is not doing well, but rather with all the maneuverings it ended up mismanaged. Was it calculated? Perhaps. They knew with the Y4 still in the picture, control won't solely be this. They needed to come up with plan B. The pieces of the puzzle are coming together. Plan A was 1. Demand of his share back. 2. File cases against the Y4 to destroy their credibility. 3. Get the public's sympathy by showcasing OVY, the distraught mother. 4. Oust the Y4 from their functions in the company. 5. Expose and threaten their personal lives. 6. Harass anyone who have leanings towards the Y4, friends and employees alike. 7. File criminal non-bailable charges against the Y4 and some of their children. Apparently, Plan A did not loosen the Y4's grip on their late father's legacy and wishes. They stood their ground in spite of all the lies and challenges thrown at them. Y2 still have partial control. Plan B is definitely needed. Plan B is 1. Siphon cash collections. 2. Transfer machinery and equipment. 3. Claim to have no funds for A. Paying retirement plans of employees. B. Paying all YGBC suppliers. 4. File for bankruptcy. These are what we see up front, but unbet now as to the public. The intention and motive of Y2 is to pave the way for their new transport business, the Lovevis Airs Transport Express Incorporated, which as of press time has an application for issuance of a new certificate of public convenience with the route of Iloilo City to the municipality of Barutak Viho and vice versa, with an existing LTRFB approved 15 units of buses. A letter to the Mayor, Honorable Neil Tupas, of the municipality of Barutak, requesting for endorsement and support. Incidentally, on a side note, the mayor of that municipality is a direct relation to the family Calzi. Some twist of fate, we might say. With one deliberate sweep, the three, OVY, GYD, LRY, have so far managed to smooch almost everything, and work to destroy the legacy and business which the late Dr. Ricardo B. Janssen painstakingly built all these years. They are so eager to pursue their desire of full control at the expense of their own flesh and blood, along with the people, the employees, who helped build the company to what it is. The present management failed to offer substantial assistance during this time of pandemic. If YGBC is to be no more, what happens to them? Are the 18,000 employees just collateral damage now? Let the record show that Leo Ray, Jeanette, along with their mother Olivia, OVY, do not at all value nor respect Dr. Ricardo V. Janssen as what he was as a person, a father, and a husband. More so his hard work and visions for his family and employees. In fact, they not only have killed the legacy, buried it with him, but also have the audacity to spit on his grave. Who's not to say RBY is turning in his barrow?
But what is important is harmony between all of you. Between the second, third, and all the generations of the family. While there is unity, there is strength. I know for a fact that the hand of so many people that managed people before. Now because of sibling rivalry, because of the cases filed left and right by each and every one of them to anybody, all them. Ang parta nila yun, mahuhulan nila sa alabas. Gusto na yan, bukas. I hope will not happen. Kung may diferensya ang isa sa inyo, ang pasensya namin. You will be like children. Ang mga children niya, kung inambakang ng may bata niya, dito na tako rin hindi sa ibang. Kung nag-sila bumanay nila niya, kaya sanayin na sila. Kaya huwag sila nag-alubog sa kaya-sa-isa. RAPIDO! Kaya yung diferensya, sometimes we cannot forget them. At kahit suway, what is important is to forgive and forget what they're getting on my friends. And I would like you to promise each and everyone here, and probably you will have a chance to have I hope that we will inculcate that in our minds, in our hearts, kung ano ang mayroon sa isa-isa natin. RAPIDO! Pasensya ko, nagiging pasensya kita. Kalabanan sa mga successful life are the people who started because they are hardworking. So we are a family to be recommended if all of you will join forces together. If all of you will be one in history. What is important is integrity. What is important is trustworthiness. Without that, you are nothing as a RAPIDO!
The Shareholders Agreement.
RAPIDO!
Family-owned businesses may be the oldest form of business organization and today is recognized as a dynamic participant in the economy. Family businesses also face a unique set of challenges with uncertain boundaries. That it is why having a clear statement of goals, an organized plan to accomplish the goals, a defined hierarchy for decision making, an established plan for succession, and strong lines of communication is important to prevent many possible problems from arising. Even if your corporation is private and closely held with only a few shareholders, it's important to have an agreement. This agreement is intended to make sure that shareholders are treated fairly and that their rights are protected. The Valaka Transit Incorporated, VTI, and part of the Janssen Group of Companies, YGBC, a service-oriented closed family corporation has one such agreement, an integral component in the Janssen's family business structure, that the late Dr. Ricardo B. Janssen made sure of. He was looking to the future, wanting to keep the company within the family, and making sure that his descendants and successors are protected, and can carry on what he has started. He sought professional assistance to propel his family to engage in business development workshops for the proper succession of the presidency and the management. He made family members undergo processes which made their business a very well-structured one. However, conflict arose and what was supposed to be a clear-cut transition with a legally made agreement became a mangled mess. Here begins the Janssen Shareholders Agreement story.
RAPIDO!
The Shareholders Agreement. What is a shareholders agreement? Simply defined, a shareholders agreement is an agreement between the owners of the business, with the business as a whole, and with each other. Its purpose is to set out the rights, duties, and obligations of both the company and the shareholders and their relationship. Not all businesses are required, however. It is in the best interest of a company with shareholders to have one. In the context of ownership and security, this contract attempts to regulate privileges. With that being said, the late Dr. Ricardo B. Janssen, RBY, wanting to keep the company within his family, legally divided and specifically stated that the ownership be passed on to his 6 remaining children, namely, Roy, Emily, Jeanette, Selena, Ricky and Leo Ray. A decision that Ricardo B. Janssen, his wife, Olivia V. Janssen, OVY, mutually agreed on. The latter having signed the shareholders agreement waiving up their rights to those shares and to equally divide it to their 6 children. So, in October 10, 2013, the whole family affixed their signatures and the Janssen shareholders agreement came to be. When the Janssen family feud surfaced, and the siblings were now divided into 2 factions, Y2 and Y4, this legal document has an important role to play, and is brought to the table. One would have thought this clears, and proves the validity of the Y4's shares ownership and majority hold. However, it is mind-boggling how a legally binding contract can be and is repeatedly challenged up to this very day. RAPIDO! The shareholders agreement. The late Dr. Ricardo B. Janssen was known for his acuity, which greatly contributed to the immense success of his company. His visions were not limited to his business dealings alone, but extended into ensuring that it goes hand in hand with his family. He knew that, in order to have a strong business, it was critical to have harmony within the family. Aligning visions and values with a strong commitment from family members helps to make tough decisions that will steer the company in an appropriate direction. Part and parcel in building that structure, the Janssen family underwent a considerable estate planning process to help deal with necessary concerns in carrying the core values forward, and to properly communicate details in benefits and ownership of each member of the family and the succeeding generations. The shareholders agreement, being one of the action taken, is an important aspect of the whole series of undertaking among others. It is also important to note that every family who takes on estate planning has different content and context in their shareholders agreement depending on what the family desires. Being able to come up and complete details on that agreement was not easy, so the Janssen family considered it as a significant success, one step achieved as a unit, choosing October 10th, 2013 as the date to affix and seal that achievement was not random. It was chosen so that they won't forget, as it was also Roy V. Janssen's, RSY's, birthday. It was a double celebration. RAPIDO! The shareholders agreement, creating a legacy per se, consists of several factors taken into consideration. It must well be thought of and gradually done. Building and putting a business structure in place is surely not done overnight. A generational transition primarily needs to have a focused and keen planning. That is why significant impetus is given to an estate and succession planning amongst families with a private corporation such as the Janssens. The late Dr. Ricardo B. Janssen had the foresight that these mechanisms are essential and applicable to his business and family. The Janssens hired and sought help from experts and professionals from Manila in this particular field to properly and correctly guide them to put things in order. There is no one-size-fits-all when it comes to matters of this kind. Every family has specific attributes and needs, so every detail of any planning process must be catered and patterned to what is called for. The shareholders agreement is just a speck of the entirety of the plotted roadmap set by the experts and lawyers handling the succession planning of the Janssen family, from the patriarch, matriarch, second generation, and the following generations. The estate planning lawyer thoroughly discussed with them the procedural processes of how to go about with the division of shares of stock of each branch of heir, the end goal being that the company will be professionalized, wherein each descendant will have their own holding company which can later be passed on directly to their offsprings, again taking into consideration wishes and needs of each, so on and so forth. Clearly this whole concept of an intergenerational transfer of family legacy is tedious and complex. A voluntary commitment with full consent from each family member was required for it to be a smooth and successful transition. For the Janssens to produce a shareholders agreement was indeed a reason for celebrating an achievement, as one step from several tasks had been completed. How disconcerting that with the ongoing dispute the Y2, along with the matriarch, has made a mockery of this once commemorative fruition by making it look like the whole thing is a sham. RAPIDO! Roadblocks to reconciliation. The current dispute of the Janssen family about ownership and control is still very much ongoing. It may no longer occupy front pages of sites, but the water is still boiling, as no resolutions in and out of courts are in sight. A year ago, the four siblings, the Y4, expressed hope to reconcile with their mother, Olivia V. Janssen, OVY. The Y4 were banking on reaching an amicable and peaceful settlement, instead of a long legal process that could drag on 4 years. However, that did not materialize, as OVY demanded, as part of her conditions, that the Y4 return or give up their company shares. As we all know, those shares of stocks were equally divided among all the 6 children, and were legally transferred to them long before their father, Dr. Ricardo B. Janssen, passed. The Y4 did not agree to this one-sided reconciliation conditions. So, OVY continued to file several more cases against her 4 children thereafter. Addressing these filed cases amidst the COVID pandemic slowed down the process, but the Y4 were able to attain significant victories, as a few were dismissed, and in their favor. This did not halt OVY in filing some more. She filed a non-bailable qualified theft case against the Y4 at the DOJ just this May 18, 2020. End of August 2020, news broke out that OVY was hit by COVID, and was rushed and airlifted to Manila for treatment. A twist that opened up a window of hope. Even if the Y4 were unable to directly convey their love and concern to their mother, they continued to rally the public to pray along with them for her health and recovery. The reconciliation card was brought to the table once more, but the primary focus was rooting for her to overcome the health crisis. Thank the heavens, she did. One would think, or so much hope, that, after undergoing such health ordeal at her age, and as a mother could change her perspective and reassess the current family dispute. A change of heart maybe, or to put more effort in fixing healing broken relationships. A perfect time to utilize second chances and perhaps give that reconciliation card another try. Alas, that is not to be so. The roadblocks are still up, and no charges have been dropped. The Y4 are still accused of stealing what is, in truth, legally and rightfully theirs. Absurd versus the relationship between a child and a parent is one of the most instinctively protective, loving, and nurturing things humans experience. But for some, the connection with a parent is marred by feelings of deep hurt and resentment. More than a year has passed since the turmoil within the Janssen family started, and at this point it seems futile even to find explanations for a mother's behavior towards her 4 other children. The Y4, Olivia V. Janssen, OVY, has managed to throw punch after punch by filing cases against them. One such filing is the petition of declaration of nullity to the extrajudicial settlement of estate with waiver of rights, which stated her consent in the division of the shares of stocks and properties of her late husband, which she has also signed last December 15, 2015. Without waiting for the courts to resolve this case, she filed a new qualified theft case at the DOJ last May 18, 2020, launching yet another allegation that her 4 children, the Y4, have no right to these shares, and therefore declared that they have stolen it from her. Qualified theft means one has unlawfully taken personal property of another individual and the taking done without the consent of the owner. That statement alone disproves her claims. There are existing legal instruments, accompanied with actual visual documentation of the signing, that validates the Y4's ownership to the shares. Putting all these allegations together, piece by piece, one finds that all these comes out totally absurd. Y2, along with their mother, has set the stage up for the public to be confused with all their twists and turns. But the fact remains, legal documents were voluntarily agreed upon and signed that all 6 children are by law rightful owners and heirs of Dr. Ricardo B. Jansen. We will not tire of declaring that basic and simple truth. Grand scheme of things, we have repeatedly established that Olivia V. Jansen played favorites amongst her 6 children. It may have not been that obvious in the past to many who are outside looking in, but within the family, the other children knew it for a fact. OVY and her favored children, Jeanette Y. Dumancus, GYD, and Leo Ray V. Jansen, LRY, dragged their internal disputes out in the open to gain the public's sympathy, holding press conferences, gatherings, and acting out as the aggrieved party by feeding the public lies and painting the other 4 quiet and anonymous children as the bad guys. Surely, it wasn't OVY's idea. How can an 86-year-old woman think of such grand display of fanfare? They were just stringing her along, using her as the face, since she has the status and the authority. She just needed to be convinced. Now, who are these they? Possibly those hanging around her, individuals who would willingly service her by saying things she wants to hear, people who will gladly be at her beck and call because they would gain something out of it. Their opinions may be heard or listened to by OVY, but to have gravity in the decision making, it must be someone whom she is really close with and truly trusts. Anyone can deduce from this simple observation who they are. To formulate and execute the destruction of the other siblings, the Y4's reputation and lives, it must be someone who is knowledgeable of the family's dynamics and details. Person, or persons who are aware of what not to highlight like their strengths, but to hit hard on their personal weaknesses. Lastly, one who can carry out orders and possess the power of manipulation. From the 2 favorites of OVY, choose who most likely can handle and carry out such a master plan. RAPIDO! The who, what, and whys. Everything was in place. Dr. Ricardo B. Jansen took measures in preparing the family and the business for the future. Again, each member of the Jansen family was aware and has agreed to move in one direction. A successful long-running business, divided shares, and financial freedom for all. What can one ask for? Sadly and apparently the other party wants more, or most likely by hook or by crook. One saw. A few years after RBY passed, Olivia V. Jansen, OVY, along with her 2 other children, Jeanette Y. Dumancus and Leo Ray V. Jansen, instigated to hurl accusations against the other 4 members of the family, the Y4. RAPIDO! The Y4 had run themselves dry trying to make sense of all these attacks against them. What is so wrong in making decisions to protect the company, Rapalio anomaly, and LRY's OVY massive withdrawals? What is unlawful in following through with what was set legally by RBY, EJS, SHA? What is the heir in honoring his wishes and continuing his legacy, family constitution and succession planning? RAPIDO! What have they done to earn such ire and so much hatred from their own mother? Are they at fault for being children and rightful heirs of RBY2? Are they in the wrong for fighting for what is rightfully and legally theirs to start with? Have they harmed her, or plotted against her, or the proper question should be, have they in the past been imprisoned for killing another individual, and have planned the same for her? Why would she accuse them of qualified theft? Why is she aggressively pursuing that they be imprisoned? Why proclaim and label them as criminals? Why would she retract on the things that were agreed on when RBY was still alive? Who is feeding her lies? Who is persuading her to destroy the Y4? Who is making her hate them so much? Who is encouraging her to take all these actions? Who is making her indignant to their very existence? Who is moving the chess pieces? We could go on and on. This heavy cloud of unanswered questions shall continue to hover the Y4. However difficult, the Y4 are bravely facing these challenges together, steadfast in believing that fighting for what is right and just in continuing their father's legacy is all worth it. The disinheritance. It may not necessarily be illegal to disinherit a child, children, but if a parent oversteps and has other intentions due to influence of another, then the child, children reserves the right to challenge the case to disinherit. Most surviving parents don't realize that their deceased spouses' shares of the estate left or given are irrevocable and could not be changed. They simply cannot do that. Dr. Ricardo B. Janssen Sr. showed that he wanted all his children to be involved in running the YGBC, and not his wife or just his 2 children or anyone other than his immediate family, for that matter. Last April of 2019, Olivia V. Janssen filed a petition for probate of her last will and testament, wherein there was a motion to disinherit her other 4 children, namely Roy, Emily, Selena, and Ricky Jr., the Y4, citing acts and deeds as grounds for such. The Y4 are opposing this motion because of the illegal grounds to which it was filed, and because her main purpose is to take away their authority over the company and transfer it to her other 2 favored children, Jeanette Y. Dumancas and Leo Ray V. Janssen, and along with it also putting outsiders as part of the board. The intent to blindside the Y4 was clear as the probate petition was notarized February 13th, 2019, 2 weeks prior to the family's mediation session under the supervision and presence of Judge Franklin De Monte Birdie on another but related case. Furthermore, the lawyers who were present in that mediation were also the same ones who drafted and notarized the petition for probate. The intention to disinherit was already concrete before the sit-down. All the more, the 4 children would want to protect and fight for what is legally and rightfully theirs. The witness. Olivia V. Janssen's move and action in this ongoing dispute with her other 4 children. The Y4 is not thought of and done solo. A few personas who one way or another had influenced her decision makings over all of these. One such individual is a Janssen couple's friend, retired Judge Anita Guanzon Chua. She has been present for about 2 decades in the lives of the Janssens. a friend, a legal advisor perhaps, and now key person in pursuing cases against OVY's 4 other children, the Y4. A retired judge, who in her career span has handled medium to high profile cases in the span of her career, from an assistant city prosecutor to a regional trial court judge that handled the family court. Her name has been in the limelight of late as she was one of the outsiders made to become a part of the YGBC board last year, and just recently served as one of the witnesses to Olivia V. Jansen's petition for probate of the latter's last will and testament. On the stand, she did confirm some questions regarding her stature as a judge, and confirmed her affiliation and friendship with OVY. RAPIDO! On those points, we shall further discuss who Judge Anita G. Chua is, and what exactly is her role in all of these, as she has included herself, and actively participated in going after the 4 Jansen siblings, by filing a perjury case against them, which by the way, she denied under oath among other things. Anita Guanzan Chua is a visible figure alongside Olivia V. Jansen these days. In fact, she has not only become OVY's constant companion, but also managed to involve herself in the Jansen's personal lives. She can be equated as someone who has knowledge about privy matters of the family, observed, or testified on OVY's behalf, however feigning ignorance on specific details. Rapido! 1. She claims not knowing the specifics on the Jansen family constitution, when in actuality she does, because OVY has had the documents photocopied and given to the trusted advisors, Judge Voltaire Apolio and her. 2. Being a longtime friend, and with a legal background, she knew Jeanette Y. Dumanca's kidnap and murder case automatically disqualifies GYD as OVY's executor of her last will and testament, yet supported the latter's appointment as one. 3. She claims to have no knowledge of any case she filed against the Y4, when her name is printed on the documents submitted to the Department of Justice, as one of the complainants in the perjury case she filed. How ironic, to falsely accuse the Y4 of the very same thing she is liable for. Chua handled the family court for a long time, and should have practiced what that court represented, which was preserving solidarity of family, and provide procedures for reconciliations and amicable settlements of any controversy within, and objectively advised OVY not to drag the family into this mess by filing non-bailable cases against her other 4 children and grandchildren. But instead, she has unabashedly and purposely weaved herself into this family, making full use of the situation in order to get what she wants out of them. A judge like herself is an expert at reading people and can easily identify their needs, likes, vulnerabilities and emotional hot buttons, and conceivably utilize that in her quest for power. She has found herself a patron in the person of OVY, who is impressed by her that the latter was willing to take her under her wing, making her a go-to legal advisor and even protecting her from detractors. Perhaps Chua, for her part, took advantage of this to build rapport and be granted favors, maybe bestowed with tokens like a substantial allowance, lifestyle perks, and a seat in the company. A perfect retirement plan. Leaving you with this: how is it possible that for someone with that stature, and supposedly knows the ins and outs of the law, can blatantly utter a false statement thrice under oath, unless they are confident that no matter what, the court will still be in their favor? Think about it. In memory. November usually marks the observance of honoring and remembering our loved ones who had passed. Due to the pandemic and quarantine protocols, a lot were unable to do the usual visit, including the Y4. RAPIDO! They had to contend with pictures posted by people who were able to visit their father's final resting place. Along with the ache of not being able to, it was more heartbreaking to see that in the 5 years that he has been gone, the mausoleum that was meant to be constructed is not yet done to this day. The mausoleum, and the whole reason it exists itself, is a memorial to the deceased. It's a physical emblem of that person, and in caring for it, we offer the person's memory a chance to linger. Sadly, it clearly shows that the Y2, having taken control of almost everything, does not care to honor the life of their patriarch. The ones that do care are prevented and unable. A mausoleum usually provides a space to allow family and people to visit in comfort year-round, sit in comfort, and reflect in a peaceful environment. As we all know, this is not so, as there is no peace amongst the remaining family members. RAPIDO! The state of the structure seems to reflect what the Y2, including OVY, really think and feel. The tombstone surrounded by an unfinished structure, devoid of color, abandoned, right in the middle of emptiness. Just like how the Y2 have managed to abandon what was agreed years ago, they seem to intentionally throw out the importance of RBY's legacy and the legal rights of the Y4. RAPIDO! The vast desolation at the non-existent mausoleum clearly shows a great injustice to his past existence and memory. YGBC's blight and disease. RAPIDO! Businesses run by families are dominant in the country, but only a few can successfully pass on the baton. Valaka Transit Incorporated is one family-owned company that had that clarity of roles and responsibilities, defined decision-making parameters, and a collective agreement on the direction of the business. However, the death of the patriarch, Dr. Ricardo Janssen Sr., made some of his family members successors, namely Olivia V. Janssen, Jeanette Y. Dumancus, and Leo Ray V. Janssen, known as the Y2, managed to bring it to a different direction, armed with a different agenda, and managed to destabilize the whole business in a matter of months. When the Y2 forcefully took over the running of the company from the Y4, the legal members of the board and equally rightful heirs, and put into place unqualified power-hungry individuals to lead and continue the company's operations. It left the company in a state of disarray, endangering the retirement and livelihood of 18,000 employees, and rocked the once steady relationship with longtime suppliers. Along came the pandemic, with additional challenges, which unfortunately the current management were not fully equipped to handle, brought about more discontentment and red flags to the company's sustainability. Sadly, most of these individuals, not part of the family, and were not even part of the actual succession plannings, are now the ones making decisions for the company, again seeking behavior of corruption that operates successfully because of a complex web of relationships between bribe receivers and bribe givers that ensure flow of discretionary powers in exchange for favors with the underlying element of trust. The main actors are the company officials, with supporting roles played overtly by middlemen, who act as consultants or liaison agents brokering deals. The company is suffering from blight and disease, brought about by these fungi-like individuals, threatening decay the vines that gives YGBC its life. The Y4 collectively has the full capacity to run the family business, but with the continuing injustices thrown at them, they cannot take hold of the reins. Until then, the company is dangerously in the brink of ruin. YGBC's blight and disease. Businesses run by families are dominant in the country, but only a few can successfully pass on the baton. Valaka Transit Incorporated is one family-owned company that had that clarity of roles and responsibilities, defined decision-making parameters, and a collective agreement on the direction of the business. However, the death of the patriarch, Dr. Ricardo Janssen Sr., made some of his family members successors, namely Olivia V. Janssen, Jeanette Y. Dumancus, and Leo Ray V. Janssen, known as the Y2, managed to bring it to a different direction, armed with a different agenda, and managed to destabilize the whole business in a matter of months. When the Y2 forcefully took over the running of the company from the Y4, the legal members of the board and equally rightful heirs, and put into place unqualified power-hungry individuals to lead and continue the company's operations. It left the company in a state of disarray, endangering the retirement and livelihood of 18,000 employees, and rocked the once steady relationship with longtime suppliers. Along came the pandemic, with additional challenges, which unfortunately the current management were not fully equipped to handle, brought about more discontentment and red flags to the company's sustainability. Sadly, most of these individuals, not part of the family, and were not even part of the actual succession plannings, are now the ones making decisions for the company, again seeking behavior of corruption that operates successfully because of a complex web of relationships between bribe receivers and bribe givers that ensure flow of discretionary powers in exchange for favors, with the underlying element of trust. The main actors are the company officials, with supporting roles played overtly by middlemen, who act as consultants or liaison agents brokering deals. The company is suffering from blight and disease, brought about by these fungi-like individuals, threatening Decatur the vines that gives YGBC its life. The Y4 collectively has the full capacity to run the family business, but with the continuing injustices thrown at them, they cannot take hold of the reins. Until then, the company is dangerously in the brink of ruin. A prosperous company, whilst having the best intentions, but ignores existing corporate values and culture, will eventually be destroyed. Particularly crucial for companies like YGBC, whose major asset are its employees. However, it also needs to have qualified leaders to run the show. If an employee's desire to add value and perform quality work is killed, they will just start mimicking and going through every paycheck without adding value. Because the management no longer gives value to the system and mindset left by the late founder, Dr. Ricardo B. Janssen Sr. As a result, the quality of services provided to customers becomes lower. Employees lose their motivation. These symbols reflect the employees' attitude to their company. If they are proud of it and its symbols, they will treat them with respect. However, if the company atmosphere is oppressive, corporate identity element can be perceived as the embodiment of that oppression, making the situation even worse. The ongoing family dispute generated an emotional void that was filled, giving rise to incompetent and power-hungry leaders who took the place of the Y4, who incidentally are still rightful owners, and heaven knows the major dent the current management has inflicted to the company. The installed leaders per se do not care about the company, but whose only concern is how to enrich themselves. These bosses do not understand and respect other employees, therefore loses authority and credibility. If this goes on, the company entirely will reach its point of no return. YGBC's blight and diseases. Isaiah chapter 56 verse 11. And the dogs are greedy, they are not satisfied. And they are shepherds who have no understanding. They have all turned to their own way, each one to his unjust gain, to the last one. We shall continue to look closely, under the microscope of the immensity of contamination within YGBC, brought about by Father Hernan Omisolio, aka HBO and his mob. Do you know that HBO terminated long-time senior employees, who have been with the company from the beginning? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, he replaced them with individuals, who are part of his ring, people he can control and hold by the leash. That's one way in protecting his power. Hire only people who depend on, and look up to him. In exchange for doing things without any questions, they get to participate in, for the lack of a better word, their ongoing racket. Anyway, all terminated or retired employees have not been paid with their separation pay, because they were told that the company does not have money to pay them. Really, HBO? So if the company cannot afford to pay, how come you can afford to approve cash advances to your favored ones? You may fool bystanders and people looking from the outside, who are not aware of the person that you are, and how you operate, but not the old-timers and those who are working from the inside. The truth of the matter, the separation pay, is no more, as it has been diverted to the cash advance funds to cater the whims, extra expenses of yours and those of your cohorts. HBO and his mob intentionally took these employees' individuals' livelihood and security, so they can satisfy their lust for gain. Wow, Father HBO, how can you sleep at night knowing that you have pulled the rug under these people, who worked tirelessly all these years? Then again, someone as callous as you can. YGBC's blight and diseases. Philippians verse 2, chapter 3-4. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. We have talked about the plight of the terminated senior employees, who have yet to taste their compensation. The current management claims that the company does not have the money, maybe because it was all spent paying for the bodyguards of all the VPs, most especially that of Holy Father Hernan Omisolio, HBO. Yes, you all heard it right. HBO's bodyguards ride an Innova, which tells and protects him everywhere he goes. How privileged, the legal and rightful owners don't have bodyguards, but HBO and the other VPs have. What about the remaining 18,000 YGBC employees, you ask? Newsflash, the management does not care for their welfare. Again, unless they are amongst the favored of HBO. They have to endure with the current working atmosphere day in and day out. The employees are oppressed and harassed by the managers. Dictatorship is the leadership style now in the way they handle the people. How you say? HBO along with his assembly of followers in the managerial postions, implemented significant changes for new hires of bus drivers. These chosens are given new buses and good routes, while drivers who have served the company for 10 years or more are assigned with old defective buses and perilous routes. The employees have no right anymore to complain, or to be heard of their problems. Doing so will earn them the ire of these managers and or face termination. Sadly, others are just opting to quietly leave and transfer to other bus companies, then suffer from this kind of treatment. This is not how the founder envisioned his company to be. If you can recall, one of RBY's main thrusts was to make sure the lives of their employees and families get better as they journey together to success. The family's heart was always for, and with their employees. In short, they malassack it for the people working in the company as opposed to what is happening now. And what of the labor union? A better question would be, is there one? It seems that it does not serve its purpose, which is to aid employees with negotiations, work problems, and employment protection. It looks like the labor union is not for the employees, but are for the company. The officers of the labor union did not offer any help to employees that were terminated without cause. Corruption, injustice, bullying. Until when can one endure? Next, we shall continue to dig deeper on what are the existing rackets Father HBO and his MOB are into. We shall also get to know his MOB. YGBC's Blight and Disease. RAPIDO! What goes on within the walls of YGBC? Under the management of Father Hernan Omisilio, aka HBO, corruption is prevalent. How so? Fraudulent schemes seems to be practiced in the way things are done. Apparently, under the table deals are happening and seemingly approved by some top men in the company, namely managers, department heads, and VPs. Deals that make way for them to make money, which directly goes to their own pockets. A series of illegitimate enterprise, or in short rackets, that HBO's so-called illipories are implementing, such as applying cuts and or even demanding extra fees from several transactions. YGBC's Blight and Disease. Psalm verse 82 chapter 3. Defend the weak and the fatherless, uphold the cause of the poor and oppressed. There is this new thing when it comes to bus repairs. The mechanic will only prioritize repairs to one's particular assigned bus. If the driver pays, it means if you don't give the extra fee, you will find yourself at the end of the line without a bus to drive until they decide when and if it gets repaired. Without a bus, drivers and conductors can't bring in any income and got nothing to remit at the end of their shift or working day. RAPIDO! Speaking of drivers, remember what we mentioned previously, that new hires which are under Father Hernan Omisilio, HBO, favored list get new buses to drive? Well, it seems if an old timer and whoever is not on that category would want to have a good bus and route, he just needs to pay the yardman. How brutal. Not only are you not included in the list, you need to shell out money to be treated well. What happened to the values and work ethics the late founder, RBY, had pushed tirelessly to establish? Those that could have and would have carried that legacy have been kicked out to be replaced by people in positions of authority who abuse their power or otherwise engage in fraudulent activities to gain undue advantage over the others. Why? All because of greed of money and desires for power and lifestyle. How can we let evil overpower what is good? The good is always trampled upon. Why are we allowing the Holy Father Hernan Omisilio, aka HBO, to run this circus of corruption? There is a low level of democracy within YGBC's walls. The high and mighty current management are calling all the shots. Maybe you people need to be reminded that you are all mere employees. Most even are just new ones. RAPIDO! Get down on your high horses and check reality. All of you are not, we repeat, are not in any way a Jansen. RAPIDO! How unjust, unfair, and ungodly. YGBC's Blight and Disease. RAPIDO! 1 Timothy 6 verse 9. Those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap, and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. Greedy people are first in line to ask for more instead of adopting the view that everyone benefits as the pie gets larger. They view the pie as a constant. There's only so much to go around. They feel they deserve a larger piece, even at someone else's expense, and they are going to take it. Such are the likes of the current VPs, managers, and some department heads of YGBC. Let's not make Father Hernan Omisilo, HBO, hog the spotlight, shall we? Let him share the limelight with the others that complete the mob. Majority of them are department heads, managers, and VPS, who look for clever ways or loopholes to outsmart rules and regulations in the company, designed to protect the system for personal gain, evading their responsibilities by offloading the costs to others by their under-the-table schemes to support their extracurricular expenses. RAPIDO! These men are also said to be cockfighting aficionados, the moneyed lot who are usually involved with expensive brood cocks of pedigree trained for big money derby events. Real deal gamblers and big bettors of this sport. Okay langsana brad kung perania, iang kasu. It isn't. It is money that should have gone to the separation pay of terminated employees, retirement fund, and profits that belong/should go to the company. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing the mob members who are running a competitive race to see who has the best lifestyle. 1. Danny Larenton. 2. Attorney Colin Isito. 3. Ian Galimba. 4. Joel Vistal. 5. Lyndon Dacalus. Remember these names, as they are apparently identified as the culprits, living off or stole from other people's hard-earned money, people who were with YGBC while it was still striving to make it as a company in the transport industry. YGBC's blight and disease. Luke 12 verse 15. Then he said to them, watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. To augment funds for their personal expenses, unsanctioned deals are done left and right. It is said that those who do unofficial transactions for all contracts that the company goes into now gets a commission. Like for example, a simple buying of equipment, the purchaser gets a commission. Getting new fire alarms, the manager gets a commission, so he gets to choose a specific supplier. Spare parts and bus components either local or imported from abroad. The VP for maintenance gets commissions from all of these purchases. Commissions are all deposited directly to the VP's account. No wonder these following individuals, most very new to the company, can carry on with their lifestyles. 1. Father Hernan Omisilo has a brand new house worth about 8 million pesos with a swimming pool in a private subdivision. He dons a Rolex Seedweller watch and owns 2 new SUV. 2. Attorney Isito has bought and continues to buy buildings left and right. 3. Lyndon Dacalus has 2 brand new SUV. 4. Danny Larenton just recently had a house blessing and big celebration for his newly built house in Mindanao. 5. Ian Galimba has a new Raptor and a motorcycle. 6. Joel Vistal, a loan shark to the employees. He also rents out music equipment and his #1 customer a series. Of course. Check out the pictures. We rest our case. DOJ dismisses complaints against Y4 for qualified theft, falsification and perjury. RAPIDO! The case filed by Olivia V. Jansen, as well as that filed by supporters of Leo Ray Jansen and Jeanette Dumancus or the Y2, against Troy, Emily, Ricardo Jansen Jr., and Maria Lourdes Selena Lopez, also known as the Y4, to legitimize their control over Valika Transit Incorporated. VTI, despite the Y4 majority shareholdings of 61.16% of its outstanding capital stock, were dismissed early this month by the Department of Justice, DOJ. In her complaint for qualified theft, perjury and falsification, Olivia claims that the Y4 had taken her conjugal shares in VTI and apportioned them between the siblings without her consent. Through two extrajudicial settlement documents covering her husband's Ricardo V. Jansen Sr. estate, Olivia however admitted that she filed a suit to annul these extrajudicial settlements, which is pending with branch 42 of the Bacolod RTC. Olivia further alleged that the VTI General Information Sheet, dated July 9, 2019, which was filed by then VTI Corporate Secretary, EVY, was falsified, as it constitutes untruthful statements in a narration of facts. The supposed untruthful statements are that 1. She and her late husband no longer own 15,346,000 shares in VTI.
RAPIDO!
2. The VTI Special Board meeting on July 7, 2019, resulting in the ousting of then VTI President LRY, was valid. Finally, Olivia claimed that the November 27, 2019 complaint filed by the Y4 against her is perjurious, and that the Y4 made deliberate assertions of falsehood. However, A. 2015 extrajudicial settlement, and B. 2017 amended extrajudicial settlement of the state of Ricardo Sr., among other documents, the Y4, Y2 and Olivia unanimously agreed that the 6 Jansen siblings would receive equal shares in VTI, and that Olivia waived her rights over those shares in favor of her children in exchange for various real and personal property. Note that both extrajudicial agreements were signed in each and every page by Ricardo Sr., namely Leah Ray, Jeanette, Roy, Emily Jansen, Ricardo Jr., Mayalo D. Selena, and his wife, Olivia. The DOJ, through Assistant State Prosecutor Philip Delacroix, found that the above allegations stemmed from the extrajudicial settlement of the estate of Ricardo Sr. and its amended version, but dismissed the complaint, saying that these contracts are binding unless they are annulled by a proper action in court. They are susceptible of ratification. Thus, the filing of the case is premature, because the trial court of Bacolod City has yet to resolve whether or not the EJS is indeed void. In fine, no cause of action will lie against herein respondents at this stage of the proceedings, and a cause of action depends upon the result of the civil case still pending with the RTC of Bacolod City. Meanwhile, the case filed by Y2 supporters Anita Chua, Arvin Villarreal and Daniel Nicholas Gales against the Y4 for perjury was also dismissed by the DOJs, according Assistant State Prosecutor Bandan. The complainants failed to establish the third element of the crime, which is that respondent's Y4 made a willful and deliberate assertion of falsehood. The allegations made in the complaint are mere conclusions of law regarding the set of circumstances and/or assertions made in respondent's Y4's complaint. There was no evidence submitted that the respondent's Y4 deliberately and willfully asserted any falsehood. The dismissal of these criminal complaints come after the earlier dismissal by the DOJ of another set of criminal charges against the Y4 for carnapping of 55 buses, possession of explosives under Republic Act No. 9516, and robbery. Case dismissed. RAPIDO! The Jansen family had been feuding for over a year now, and cases have been piling up in the courts, as Olivia V. Jansen, keeps filing cases after cases against her 4 other children, collectively known as the Y4. The main purpose being to legitimize the Y2s, including her, control over Valaka Transit Incorporated, VTI. Despite the Y4 majority shareholdings of 61.16% of its outstanding capital stock. One such complaint, which Olivia V. Jansen filed at the Department of Justice, DOJ, was for qualified theft, perjury, and falsification amongst the string of cases filed by the minority faction of Leo Ray and his supporters after their violent takeover, without any court order of the Mansilingan head office, of VTI, which was then managed by the Y4, majority shareholders Roy, Emily, Ricardo Jr., and Marian Ortiz Selena Lopez. OVY had since gone into a tirade against the Y4 beginning on the day she disowned, but without legally repudiating her approval of the 2010 Family Constitution, which strictly prohibited suits amongst family members. She set the bad precedent by being the first to sue her other 4 children. Case dismissed. Olivia further alleged that the VTI General Information Sheet, dated July 9, 2019, which was filed by then VTI Corporate Secretary EVY, was falsified, as it constitutes untruthful statements in a narration of facts. The supposed untruthful statements are: 1. She and her late husband no longer own 15,346,000 shares in VTI. It can be remembered that in the General Information Sheet, GIS, submitted annually to the Securities and Exchange Commission for the fiscal years of 2016, 2017, 2018, and part of 2019, the majority stockholders are the Jansen 4, Roy, Emily, Selena, and Ricky. For almost 4 years, there was never a problem with this sharing. 2. The VTI Special Board meeting on July 7, 2019, resulting in the ousting of then VTI President LRY, was valid. A hard decision, made by the majority of the Board of Directors. Such decision was validly called, and in accordance with YGBC company bylaws and existing laws. Finally, Olivia claimed that the November 27, 2019 complaint filed by the Y4 against her is perjurious, and that the Y4 made deliberate assertions of falsehood. The only assertion of the Y4 is to deliberately fight for what is legally and rightfully his to start with. The only falsehood here are OVY's claims. RAPIDO! Case dismissed. Olivia V. Jansen, along with her 2 other children, are not the only ones busy looking for ways to hinder the rights of the Y4. The other party evidently signed up numerous outsiders to assist them in putting blocks and spreading misinformation which apparently they themselves believe as truths. These persons even have the audacity to file their own cases against the Y4. There is no better way for us to say it but in Hiligaynon, ano yanagad-gad, kagmaintra pajid kamuyap, mangadwa labot sapamilyap, magusognad or kamuang manatagiyap, furtekama kapulmuks. It's refreshing to see that there are some people left who can still question their attempts to discredit the rightful owners, as the DOJ has this conclusion. The case filed by Y2 supporters, Anita Chua, Arvin Villarreal, and Daniel Nicholas Gales, against the Y4 for perjury was also dismissed by the DOJ, as, according to Assistant State Prosecutor Bandan, the complainants failed to establish the third element of the crime, which is that respondent's Y4 made a willful and deliberate assertion of falsehood. The allegations made in the complaint are mere conclusions of law regarding the set of circumstances and/or assertions made in respondent's Y4's complaint. There was no evidence submitted that the respondent's Y4 deliberately and willfully asserted any falsehood. What have you to say, Y2, Elipoes? Case dismissed. It is clear from the headlines posted and printed that the complaints of qualified theft, perjury, and falsification by Olivia V. Jansen against her other 4 children were dismissed, stating the reason as the DOJ, through Assistant State Prosecutor Philip Delacruz, found that the above allegations stemmed from the extrajudicial settlement of the estate of Ricardo Sr. and its amended version, but dismissed the complaint, saying that these contracts are binding unless they are annulled by a proper action in court. They are susceptible of ratification. RAPIDO! Thus, the filing of the case is premature, because the trial court of Bacolod City has yet to resolve whether or not the EJS is indeed void. In fine, no cause of action will lie against herein respondents at this stage of the proceedings, and a cause of action depends upon the dismissal of these criminal complaints, come after the earlier dismissal by the DOJ of another set of criminal charges against the Y4 for carnapping of 55 buses, possession of explosives under Republic Act No. 9516, and robbery. This latest DOJ decision has been out over a week ago, and we heard that personalities in the judicial sector had traveled to the oriental parts of the island to hold a secret meeting. Perhaps a secret plan is on the works, since complaints of Y2 and others have been junked. Breaking news. Valaka Transit concludes annual stockholders meeting. The annual shareholders meeting of Valaka Transit Incorporated was held today, December 5th, 2020, in Cedar Capital Central Hotel, Bacolod City, presided by Colo Joaquin T. Navasa, as proxy for Mara Lourdes Celina Lopez, its resident and chairman. It was attended by stockholders representing 61.17% of the outstanding capital stock of the corporation. RAPIDO! Roy V. Jansen, Emily V. Jansen, Mara Lourdes Celina Lopez, and Ricardo V. Jansen Jr. were elected by the shareholders anew as members of the board of directors of the corporation for the year 2020-2021. The shareholders ratified all acts of transactions of the board of directors and management of the corporation, under the leadership of its president, Mara Lourdes Celina Lopez. In the organizational meeting that followed, the directors elected Mara Lourdes Celina Lopez as president, Roy V. Jansen as vice president for operations, Emily V. Jansen as treasurer and chief financial officer, Ricardo V. Jansen Jr. as corporate secretary, and Isabella C. Galvez as assistant corporate secretary, and Colo Joaquin T. Navasa as vice president for legal.
Kinamatarong sang tao may baluan ang nagakatabo sa iya palibot. Kinamatarong yaman nga makapahayag sa iya sentimiento kag panindugan sa mga isyu kag topiko nga nagafektar sa iya kabuhi kag pagsinalayo. Bangod sini, kinanglanon sang tao ang madasig kag sibo nga impormasyon nga magagiya sa iya desisyon kag aksyon. Gani dapat ang balita Rapido!
Sang una, puro arado. Subong, di motor na. May asenso.
Diri may godigol, diri may paglaom. Lupat mga kaupod, diri ang kabuhi, may asenso.
Sang una, hakot kag tulod. Subong, busin na. May asenso. Sang una, tagapangisda. Subong, makadulas abroad akong bata. May asenso.
Diri may godigol, diri may paglaom. Lupat mga kaupod, diri ang kabuhi.